This is the LOUDLABS show, episode 5. Today we talk with Kit Karzen. I am Scott Lane. Behind me is Todd Betts. Let's get to it with Victor's Package. Crazy day in Hollywood. Go.
Chaos at this Hollywood Jack-in-the-Box unfolding Tuesday afternoon when, according to police, a man began stabbing several people. Police later shooting and killing him.
Officers then observed 3 victims of stabbings here at the location as well. All 3 of those victims were transported to local area hospitals where 2 were listed in critical condition and 1 received injuries that are non-life-threatening.
All of this starting around 2 p.m. at the corner of Ivar and Sunset when police say the suspect stabbed someone outside the restaurant. One witness says the man tried to go into other nearby businesses.
And it was a guy with a knife, and he tried opening the coffee shop door, and then there was a customer inside, and held the door shut because he saw the knife, and it was a homeless crazy man or something.
Police say the suspect then went inside the Jack-in-the-Box and stabbed 2 more people. This is graphic video taken inside the restaurant seconds after the shooting. It shows one person bleeding and a man on the floor surrounded by police. Employees later seen outside the restaurant. Traffic along Sunset shut down for hours. But today, with customers inside and cars at the drive-thru, it is business back to normal. In Hollywood, I'm Victor Park for LOUDLABS News.
Check out our breakout star. The dude never disappoints. I love his package. Thank you, Victor. What a crazy day in Hollywood. And here we go. Episode 5, February 3rd, 2017. On today's show, we're going to have a mature conversation with a young man well beyond his years. It is safe to say you will be hearing more about this kid as life goes on. I personally have known him since he was about 13. It's been a privilege and an honor watching him grow into the man that sits here today. He's a World Cup competitor, a multi-time national champion, a human rights activist, a writer, a published photographer, a world traveler, and so much more. And he's only 25. Not to mention, he is the son of a great and talented man. We are proud to have in the studios, Kit Karzen.
Hey.
Thank you. Stay tuned for this conversation. It's one not to be missed. But first, let's get to some LOUDLABS news with last night's look. You better leave it. A man is in custody after leading police on a short pursuit and barricading himself in a restaurant. The commotion unfolded after police began following a stolen vehicle near Hoover and Santa Monica. Officers then tried to pull the driver over, but the driver took off. He later bailed on New Hampshire Avenue just north of the LA City College campus and into a restaurant. Customers were forced out of the restaurant and police began searching. The man was taken into custody. And now we have a bunch of people who were eating and are now being considered suspects until proven not. Got some helicopter stuff. Victor shot this for us. Thank you, Mr. Victor. Uh-oh, that's not going to work. And that is the last shot.
This is a vehicle that was traveling at high rated speed, hit a traffic light pole on the corner of 2500 block of South Sepulveda and Exposition Boulevard. LAFD arrived on scene and had 3 victims they needed to cut out of the vehicle, 2 males and 1 female. Per the captain of one of the rigs there, he said that one of the gentlemen almost lost his foot. They were all transported to a nearby hospital in critical condition. LAPD was on scene. They're still on scene. They were on scene investigating, and it's believed that maybe there was no other vehicle involved with this crash, so they were moving pretty quick. The car's pretty wrecked, so all transported.
A single vehicle crash hit a building and came to rest against a power pole. Both victims in the car were injured and transported by ambulance. Vernon PD is handling the investigation. Speed was a factor, unknown if drugs or alcohol played a part. I shot this. What a gash in that dude's head. Big gash. Look at that gash. Ouch. Ugh. Everything inside their car came out, and firefighters are throwing some kitty litter on top of it. But yeah, that thing could have been so much worse. That guy wasn't happy we were there. It was a stringer fest. There were 4 stringers at this scene.
How many are normally on a scene?
Anywhere from 1 to 4. But yeah, sometimes there's more. But this particular time, there's a certain something going on right now, and that's why everyone was there. Yeah, you might see them in there. The Brits were there. Zach was there. I was there. All right, so it's raining right now, and it will be raining probably for most of Friday and into Saturday. This was shot in South LA, Slauson, and Figueroa. Wet roads out there. Everybody please be careful. Stay safe. This was shot at USC. That was shot near USC. And then we're going into... Oh, I like that shot. Oh, look at that. I did good. This right here is in Hermosa Beach. I went chasing the rain today. That was... it's probably going to be the story of the night, is the rain, because they hyped it up so much, they have to show something. All right, and that is going to be last night's look. Last night's look.
What do you suppose they're going to show the rest of the fucking day?
Their own rain. Probably.
Where's that at?
Who knows? They're going to show this. If there's no rain to be shown, this is what they're going to show.
No, I'm just saying, look right there. Where do you see the rain?
It's coming. It is coming, and that is last night's look. Thank you so much, everybody, for last night's look. Let's get into the weekly recap. Cal Fire Riverside County Fire responded to multiple reports of a commercial structure fire. The fire was reported at Tony's Hay and Gain in the 1300 block of 6th Street. The first arriving companies reported several stacks of hay fully engulfed with fire with extension to a hay barn. Firefighters immediately began an aggressive fire attack and were able to contain the blaze to the stacks of hay and the hay barn. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Mike shot this. Good stuff, Mike.
Fire is contained. It is not knocked down. It won't be knocked down for many hours. The wind right now is about 3 to 5 miles an hour. That's continuing to cast embers into the neighboring property. We're working on suppressing those embers now. We probably won't have full containment on the fire until later this afternoon.
I shot this one. Water started gushing up from the ground in the Beverly Grove area of Los Angeles in the early AM hours. 2 cars could be seen slowly sinking into the ground. A black Honda was getting the worst of it. I had competition on this too. 2 competitors. They got 0 hits. I got 3. And that's because of this shot coming up. They don't have that. That car started to leave. And it kept getting worse. And I'm like, dude, I gotta feed it. At some point, like, it was actually worse than that, but... All right, we got a shooting near Crenshaw High School. A man was shot near Crenshaw High School, which was placed on lockdown for a time as a precaution. Emergency responders went to the 5000 block of 11th Avenue and found a man who had been shot. The unidentified man, in his 40s, was taken to a hospital in stable condition. Officials ordered a brief precautionary lockdown of the high school where classes had been scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. They were stoked. As long as it wasn't one of their friends that were shot, they were stoked because they don't have to go to school for a little bit. Police took 4 out of 5 suspects into custody following a carjacking pursuit out of LA County. 5 suspects carjacked a victim in LA County and led police on a wild pursuit that ended after they crashed in front of the youth correctional facility in Chino. They didn't have far to go. All 5 suspects took foot bail from the crash and ran into the correctional housing across from Chino Airport. 3 of the suspects were taken into custody without incident. The 4th, a male, was bitten by a police canine after he failed to comply with officers' commands to come out from under a trailer for which he was hiding. That's funny. Crashed it up.
What happened to the 5th person?
He was not caught. Police took 4 out of 5 suspects into custody.
2 people were killed by gunfire in South Los Angeles. The double homicide was reported Tuesday in the 900 block of West 74th Street. Arriving officers found 2 males down. LAPD did not disclose the ages of the victims or any information about who shot them.
Authorities are investigating what caused a fire to break out at a recycling center Wednesday night. Firefighters were called to the 11100 block of Pendleton Street. Crews began battling the fire but had trouble accessing it through a small entrance. It took crews about 40 minutes to knock down the fire. Recycling center fires are fun. I believe this one was much bigger than what our footage shows.
Still not quite sure what the cause is at this point, so hopefully as we start moving more product through, we'll be able to determine what the cause was.
San Bernardino Police SWAT surrounded an apartment on Central Avenue in Riverside, searching for a suspect in an earlier homicide in the city of San Bernardino. Residents in the complex were evacuated as SWAT attempted to get the suspect to surrender. After several hours, SWAT made entry into the apartment, where they determined the suspect was not. He got away.
A woman and some of her friends were in some sort of an altercation, which led to her being shot while in the vehicle at a different location. The victim then drove to a separate location where she and some friends called LAPD and LAFD. LAFD transported her to a nearby hospital to be checked out, and LAPD was on scene investigating, going through the car and rummaging through blood-soaked stuff in her vehicle.
All right, so we got a Huntington Beach pursuit ending here. A Huntington Beach police officer on routine patrol observed a vehicle driving erratic. The officer attempted to pull over the vehicle, but the vehicle failed to yield and led officers on a short pursuit. During the pursuit, the suspect's vehicle caused a non-injury collision with another vehicle. The suspect vehicle continued to evade officers where it crashed on Edinger Avenue east of Gothard Street. 2 suspects fled from the vehicle. 1 suspect dropped a semi-auto handgun as he was running away. 1 suspect was taken into custody not far from where the vehicle crashed, and officers conducted a search for the second suspect in a drainage ditch and nearby neighborhood. That suspect was not found. So you can get away.
He's probably with the 5th out of that 4 out of 5 ones.
Yeah. And that was our weekly recap. Wasn't that busy of a week considering last week's was super busy because of all the weather. So last week we got some good feedback. People like watching Todd do his art. So part of Todd's art is the space shuttle. Or part of Todd's story is the space shuttle. Space shuttle came to LA not too long ago, and we figured we would do something about it. So we did.
We have a go for auto sequence start.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
You're welcome to use those guys to leapfrog ahead.
All personnel, just move forward with the shuttle. Plate 2 is moving across the 405 freeway. Overpass.
TP copy. That's State Air 55 working real time.
Some personnel must remain back for call control.
Yeah, so that was the shuttle project. And anything you want to say about that, Mr. Todd?
I mean, the shuttles are, I represent the shuttles in the story Loud Labs. They're, the characters in the story Loud Labs, when the shuttles were basically knocked out of commission, the characters in the story, we end up buying them and retrofitting them and making them not, they're just basically called STS, Space Transportation Systems. We change them into more exploration vehicles and weaponize them.
Do you mind talking about the history that you have with the shuttle?
The shuttle. I grew up next door to the Barter family. Robbie Barter is a friend of mine, and his dad was an engineer for the shuttle program. So growing up next to them, of course, they had all kinds of like shuttle shit in in the house, and it was always he's always had photographs with him and astronauts, and his they even had one time I even got to look and touch one of the tiles.
Oh, really?
The high end, the top secret, the foam tiles that coat the bottom of it for re-entry. I mean, this thing was about like 6 by 6 square, like that thick, and
wow.
I mean it weighed nothing. They weighed nothing at all.
Oh wow.
And they're like the shell of an egg. That's what
cool.
That's the kind of feel like.
Nice.
But so I grew up next to Robbie and his family, and when Challenger blew up, they sent his dad to Florida to. They were trying to come up with a escape, some sort of a escape pod if this tragedy would, if the fuel cells in the tanks would to blow again, or they were trying to figure out some sort of a way to get the astronauts away from the explosion as soon as possible. But to my knowledge, they were never able to make anything kind of successfully work. So I mean, and astronaut business is inherently risky business as it is.
Yeah.
So he moved down there basically, and Robbie was finishing up high school. He was a junior when his dad left, and then when he was a senior in high school, I believe his mom left to go be with his dad and left him all alone next door. And I was a young
senior
kid.
in high school.
No,
How's yourself?
he was a senior in high school, and I was a junior, or was going through grade school. So I got to grow up and watch him basically become a man. Next door and have parties and
every night of the week.
Not a lot of parties, Jeannie. Not a lot of parties. But he basically was on his own there for a while. It was a lot of bologna sandwiches and cereal and that kind of thing. But
wow.
So yeah, I like I said, the shuttle program our space program in NASA has always been really important to me, and I'm kind of I'm sad that we don't do it anymore. We have to go to Russia now to knock on their door to see if they'll take us up. And
yeah.
Hopefully, and Elon Musk and those guys, they help out with some of the travel loads that need to go up to the space station and whatnot. So
yeah, right.
But like I said, I've been a big fan of the space program, and that's why it's kind of been integrated into my artwork and the story of Loud Labs.
See the shuttle there behind his head?
Ah, right on.
That thing went. We could probably show the footage later, but that thing went on a little ride on a weather balloon, 93,000 feet.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We have the video of it. Yeah. So thank you, Todd, for the Loud Labs Space Shuttle history. And we're going to get to our sponsors right now. Thank you so much to our sponsors. And word is, we might have a couple new ones coming up here soon. But for right now, let's get to our sponsors. Obey Imaging Supplies, Inc., family owned and operated, located in the beautiful city of Huntington Beach, California. They offer original equipment, manufactured toner, and new compatible laser inkjet toner for all makes and models. They also carry all Fuser maintenance kits, drums, micro toner, and any accessories pertaining to your printing supplies. When it comes to your toner needs, call Obey Imaging Supplies, Inc. Call Obey Imaging Supplies, Inc. today at 877-535-6239. Or check them out online, obeyimaging.com.
Market Fixtures Unlimited, the premier choice for all your supermarket and restaurant equipment needs. For over 50 years, Market Fixtures Unlimited has been serving the wonderful state of California, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. Whether you're looking for a brand new range to spruce up your restaurant's kitchen or a refurbished refrigerator unit for your supermarket, we can get all those products that you need. Let Market Fixtures Unlimited help you take your business from what it is now to what you know it's capable of being. Give Brian a call, 562-803-5553, or go to their website and check them out at marketfixturesunlimited.net.
Next up, we have Pedal Perfect. For all your flower needs and wants, call Pedal Perfect. Guys and gals, Valentine's Day is approaching. Hit up Pedal Perfect. They do it all. Weddings, parties, corporate events, you name it, call Pedal Perfect. Pedal Perfect offers local delivery in the Los Angeles and Orange County areas. Call Pedal Perfect at 562-631-6478, or connect with them on Facebook, or you can check them out on Instagram, pedal_perfect. Thanks, people. Now let's get to this conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Sponsors. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And now it's time for the conversation.
What's going on, Kit?
Hey, Todd.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Thanks for coming in today.
Of course.
So let's get into it a little bit. Let's get into your backstory. How did you get to be here, basically? What have you been involved with?
A friend of mine recently, I don't know if you guys have like heard that term, getting like woke. Woke is like, you're kind of just like cruise control and then something happens.
When you become awakened.
Awoken.
Awoken. Yeah.
So my like woke moment, I think, was in 2014 when I was in Israel for Birthright.
Yeah.
So
what is that? What's Birthright?
Birthright, if you have any Jewish descendants in your family, then the state of Israel will pay for you to go to Israel for a 10-day trip to basically learn about.
And learn about the culture and
learn
your
about the
heritage
culture.
And all that?
Yeah, and so it's actually interesting because when you go there, religion isn't the priority. It's all about like going back to wherever you came from, and the idea is that you are for Israel and you kind of like are all about it.
Does that happen at a certain age, or you have to wait?
You can do it from 18 to 26. And then
any time during that block, that's when they want you to come back and so Israel, the government actually will fund that trip for you.
All expenses paid.
What I mean, hostel, like what do you want? Anywhere you want to stay?
We're put in hotels. We get like 2/3 of the meals a day covered.
Do you have to be bar mitzvahed?
No.
All right, because my mom's Jewish, but I wasn't bar mitzvahed.
It's
funny. I have a free trip to Israel.
Well, you did when you were 26.
Oh,
yeah.
Shit. I'm 42.
Yeah, a couple of years. You can still
Israel
go.
Israel doesn't fucking want to come. They don't want you to come see them.
Very, very true. But yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because you can stay up until I think it's a month after, and in wherever, and Israel will send you back to wherever you came from as long as you leave from an Israeli airport. So people would like stay for 10 days and then they go to Greece
how many airports are in Israel?
I think there's only like one or two.
Right?
Yeah, like Tel Aviv and maybe that's it. I don't know.
What other airport are you leaving from?
Well,
once you're in Israel.
Yeah, that's also a good point. You can leave by boat.
Right. Yeah. You could leave by sea.
Yeah. So I was in Israel, and we were there actually towards the tail end of the Gaza-Israeli conflict in 2014. And so, you hear the mortar shells off in the distance on the border of Syria. You have Hamas leaders being taken out during ceasefires. When we were on the basin right outside of Gaza. I mean, it was...
How close to the action were? I mean, do you feel like buildings
we
being
were
shelled?
we were totally in an active like war zone. We
Really?
thankfully didn't have to experience any of the terror probably like 30 days before us actually being
bad.
there. But you know, there were still guys being taken out. They're active military. We had actually there. I think there are like 5 Israeli defense soldiers that come on the trip with you, and it's kind of like their quote unquote vacation.
All right.
And you have to apply and like be able to transition to take your break. And they had our soldiers stay the entire time instead of like normally just halfway because they had such a long summer. So for us, it was an incredibly eye-opening experience because we not only got to experience Israel as it stands today, but then see all the conflict that, you know, everybody talks about.
Yeah, the history. And
Yeah. So we, for me, the aha moment that I had was when we were in this town called Sderot, which is a couple kilometers right outside of Gaza. And what happens is Israel will send in supplies to Gaza to help like feed and help the region, and then they will send rockets back over. And so,
That doesn't sound fair.
yeah, it's a little.
I mean, the whole
hectic.
situation is messed up.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
back and forth.
It's incredibly messed up. And we're in this town of Sderot, and so I'm in this playground because we're having this conversation, and there's this giant worm that you can kind of like walk through. And so I'm walking into this worm, and I notice that the walls on this worm are probably like 2 feet thick. And I ask one of the tour guides, like, what? This is kind of excessive. And they said, well, this has become because it's a bomb shelter.
Shelter type thing.
Yeah, and so all the buildings in the area were basically outfitted to
withstand shelling, basically. Yeah.
And so for me, that was kind of the like, holy shit.
Yeah, life's a lot different outside of
very
Los
different
Angeles.
than you go to the
Starbucks and walk around, and you can take rides.
Yeah,
there's no walls to go between.
100%.
No barbed wire, border checks.
Pretty much. We went up to a local police station where they just have these like shelves with rows and rows and rows of like rockets that had fallen on cars or buildings, and they were all just detonated and just sitting there. And
exploded ammunitions.
Total like rockets, like the size of this table.
Not exploded.
Exploded, but they. So the funny thing with the rockets that they send in from Gaza is they aren't like explosive rockets. They're like, we're gonna send this giant piece of metal in the air. It looks like a rocket, and then it just crashes down on something.
Oh, so it's like it just ruins stuff. It's like
so it's like just torn up metal.
Right.
Yeah. So we're there, and like you hold it, and you're. It's just like this crazy out of body experience. And right after that, we end up going to this elementary school, which is just filled with kids who are like playing on just right there. So we're in this elementary school, and we're surrounded by these kids who are just kind of leading these very normal lives, except everything is retrofitted to withstand a rocket from the sky. And you see these kids in the quote unquote normalcy that they're trying or attempting to live.
Right. Yeah, look at that. She's smiling.
Yeah, just literally hanging out. And so this is probably 2 kilometers outside of Gaza.
Right.
Where, this other group of people wants them eliminated.
And do you kind of, that's what you're saying, like you kind of take notice that these people are trying to live these normal lives and from an outsider's point of view, when you're looking at this, it's like, wow, it's like you guys are really, really trying to.
Yeah, it was almost, I couldn't really put an emotion to it because it was so, for me, conflicting and confusing.
Yeah.
Because your like knee-jerk reaction is like an American who lives like in Los Angeles where you don't deal with this kind of stuff ever. Is like, why? First off, why are you here?
Right. Well, I mean, were you tense?
I got a free ride. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Were you tense? Were you scared? Did you feel?
There were a couple moments where it definitely felt very tense and unnerving and
scary.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in an active war zone. You're surrounded by countries that want to obliterate the place that you're in and take it for themselves. I mean, and not to mention just the centuries of political nuances in the region, it was a lot to take in.
Right.
So for me, that was my like woke moment, because at the time I was working in marketing at Oakley. Life was good, paycheck, got a new car, moved out, totally transitioned. This was my first job after, racing bikes professionally for 8 years. And so now I'm in the first break that I had taken ever in probably 8 years, mind you. So
8 years from what?
From the
racing?
start of cycling. Like, even when you're off, like in an off season for cycling, you're still technically
Training,
on.
yeah.
Because you can't. For me, I raced road, which is a spring and summer sport, and then track, which is a winter and spring sport. So I was always kind of just on
Road,
from an
so
early age.
you were a road racer. You like what Armstrong? What's the big race in?
So there's like the Tour de France.
Tour de
and stuff
France.
like
so
that.
road racing like that.
Yeah, so I never went anywhere near that level on the road, but for track cycling, that was kind of my bread and butter and what I aspired to do for the rest of my life. And so in 2012, when I got burnt out and needed to take a step back.
Whoa, wait. So in 2012, you've been racing you've been riding and racing.
Yeah.
For 8 years before that.
Yeah, here's some pictures of him racing right here.
How old were you when you started this?
13.
You were 13 when you get like heavily into cycling and.
There you are on a team. Is that obviously the USA team?
Yeah, that's in Manchester, England.
Look at that picture. Look at that stud.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's going right here.
World Championships in South Africa. Yeah, I mean it's a very total.
Look at those medals.
Lifestyle.
When I was young, my dad used to take me to Dominguez, the velodrome
That's,
right there. Have you ever been in there?
Yeah.
Is that still there? I mean,
the
track's still there? No.
They tore it down, the
Yeah.
outdoor track, and now
The
there's
Home
an
Depot.
indoor track.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's up until like maybe a year ago was the only indoor velodrome in the United States.
Right.
And that's where I went for 2-3 times a week for years.
And cycling took you around the world, right?
Around the world.
Where'd you go?
Where did I go?
Where'd cycling take you?
Where didn't I go?
All of Western Europe, South Africa, Moscow, Kazakhstan, throughout South America.
Wow.
You kind of just everywhere.
Pretty well traveled.
Yeah, it's. I was very, very fortunate. That's in Switzerland.
What is this?
That's Journey Racing. So Journey Racing is this like.
I mean, obviously, a guy in front of you has a motor. He's not racing.
Yeah, you have these guys typically in Europe, like older, overweight gentlemen who will be on these motorbikes, and the objective is they are riding and gas powered, so you got exhaust in your face, and your like job is to stay on their wheel because you expend way less energy when you're behind someone that's breaking the draft.
Sure.
So, but the objective is you have to stay on without blowing your own engine, and it's
But
not.
why do they get engines?
Well, so they do it.
Because they're older and out of shape.
It's like a training type of.
No, it's a race within itself. It's not like on the world circuit for professional like World Cups or anything, but it's like kind of this spectacle. That they have at 6 days, which is kind of like the circus event for track cycling.
Yeah.
So they'll go, and it's fun, and it's loud, and you got like 10, 12 of these guys who are all driving Durnies, and you're just sitting on, and then, the objective is...
I thought that was a basket in the front of his bike. What is that?
It's a gas tank.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so, these guys can, like, totally, and they do, like, eat shit.
What's the top speed on that bike?
Oh, God. For those, you could probably go like 50, 60 on a track.
And you are to keep up with that.
Yeah.
That's what you're.
Yeah, and so
you're going 50, 60 miles an hour with your
leg
legs?
power.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, well, so these, like, you throw on a massive gear, which is kind of like sixth gear in a car.
Does the velodrome, once you get going on that, your momentum, does it help you like to keep that speed going? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you're going at these in a velodrome.
That's the velodrome right here, right?
Yeah, so this is like at a 45-degree angle, and you're just kind of like cranking, and so you've got G-forces that you're dealing with, and you kind of like you turn your head to, I don't know, just make it work better.
How long does a race like that in the velodrome typically take? Like, is it laps or is it time?
They're like 10 15 different types of races. The shortest one can be a lap, which can be like 10 seconds. And then the longest one could be like 200 laps, which is like, I don't know, 50 kilometers.
Do you have a lap counter on your bike, or is there somebody sitting there telling you?
There's somebody that's their job is to just
your
like
pit crew.
Yeah.
All right, so check out this winner.
That's in San Dimas.
San Dimas, what kind of race is this?
This was it's called the San Dimas Stage Race, and it's a 3-day stage race where there's a time trial, and then one race is kind of through some mountain and hills. And
San Dimas, it's home of the most excellent water slide park in the world.
Yes,
come on down.
Right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's
a great shot. I love that shot.
Yeah, that. Where is
It's
that?
a good shot.
I don't know where that is.
All right, so you're on a power bar?
Yeah, well, so the Phil Kogan, he's the host of The Amazing Race. He became a sponsor of mine probably a third of the way into my career. And so he's 7-8-time Emmy winner, just, anything he touches turns to gold. And so he came out with energy bar line that had Manuka honey, which is this like super product based out of New Zealand. And so when he was coming out with the product, he said, "Hey, kid, what do you think about us throwing your face from that San Dimas win on the thing?" And so I was like, "Well, that's kind of awesome." Yeah, so I can give it to like my friends and just say, "Eat me." So, yeah. So that was cool. Yeah.
So then, out of
I'm loving the pics in your street clothes.
And then were you involved with Oakley while you were racing?
Yeah. So Oakley, they became a sponsor when I was 16. Yeah, and for me, my family of sponsors was, you're on the road so much, and I think that a lot of times you get alienated out of these personal relationships with people because most 17, 18, I missed like 12 weeks of school my senior year, didn't go to prom or do any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, right. And so exactly. And so I think a lot of people, they kind of take offense to it in that like, oh, you're too busy for me type of thing. Like they just don't get it. Not many kids lead the lives of like, athletes at that age. And so for me, you spend a lot of time alone. And so what I found for me personally, one of the big constants were my sponsors. And not only did they support me like emotionally and financially and through product, and that was kind of them and my parents and like my two best friends, like that was basically it.
Yeah, your whole world right there.
Yeah, so I kind of just love them.
Is that an Oakley ad, or is that just happened to be a great shot that your friend caught?
Yeah, so this is in San Francisco, actually.
It's a great shot.
When I was, I think it was 20, I launched a handlebar grip company called Zen Grips, which is the last half of my last name. And so this is from that photo shoot that we had in San Francisco with a bunch of our riders at a Red Bull event called Red Bull Ride in Style.
You look different in street clothes than them tight clothes.
Yeah, right? Clothes out a couple pounds.
But what movie I just caught was, you ever seen that Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the cycling movie? He's a delivery guy?
Yeah.
Did you like that movie?
I actually had a few friends who helped do stunts for that movie. Yeah.
And that kind of style of riding, like Messenger, that's pretty cool, right?
It's such some of the scariest shit you've ever seen. Like these guys are just bombing down hills, like
checking left and right.
100%.
Taxis. Just the shots in the movie. And I've seen the courier services in San Francisco, and they used to do it here in LA. They used to do it here in LA for a lot back in the 90s when but that's a crazy gig too, right?
My first time in San Francisco was for that Red Bull event. And when I got there, I built up my bike, and I was staying with a friend of mine who goes to USF. And so if you've ever been to USF, it's at the top of this like hill. Yeah. That's probably 3 or 4 lights up. And I hadn't put my toe strap like pedals on, which are just like flatbeds where with the strap, and you can just wear sneakers. And so to stop a fixie when you have sneakers on the road, a lot of times you just take your foot out and you jam it over the back of your rear tire so that you just kind of skid. Well, so I didn't have those on, and I just had my clip-in pedals with my cycling shoes. And so I'm like, this is fine. I know how to skid.
Right.
But I'd never done anything like this.
But do you know how to stop?
Well, so this is where it gets interesting. So I'm going down this first light, and I get ready to skid, and I immediately unclip because the pedal isn't meant for this. And so I'm like, okay, this is how I die. So I start screaming at the top of my lungs at every car, and these are busy intersections in San Francisco at noon. So I'm screaming, cars are like stopping in the middle of the road, and finally it kind of like plateaus out. And I just I get off my bike, I take a breather, a few Hail Marys, and I just I put on my shoes and I switch out my pedals right then and there.
Right.
I'm just like, this is
Gotta be smart.
Yeah, this is that was my probably my first woke moment. And don't be an idiot.
What got you into bikes?
My dad. When I was 13, I was this crazy ADHD kid who was prescribed a bunch of medications starting at 8 years old. And went through 3 years of 5 different medications. And back then, ADHD is still fairly
new,
experimental.
Yeah,
when
they
it
used to
comes
call
its-
it just
it's-
hyperactive.
Yeah,
like in the '80s, I was diagnosed with hyperactiveness. That's what they called it. And that
nice.
was I think it was ADD.
Oh,
Before they added the HD
The
in there.
HD, yeah.
They gave me Ritalin in 3rd grade.
Uh-huh.
Teachers loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I hated it. But
Yeah,
then the
good-
teachers
good
started to
numbing
feel
device.
they started to feel bad for me because I was such a zombie. Because they saw what I was like before.
yeah.
There, a lot of moving, a lot of
Wild.
talking, and then over here I was just like. Brr.
Yeah.
So they finally said, you know what, you shouldn't be on it. Teachers weren't happy that I got off. Yeah, teachers weren't happy I got off of it, but they could tell. They're like, you're not on your medicine today. But I mean, you're giving what, an 11-year-old Ritalin?
Yeah, my mom, she eventually tested.
That's the 80s for you.
Yeah, my mom who had to endure any sort of being different as a child, she was this little hyperactive girl growing up, and so they didn't even have any concept of the word. They just thought she was crazy. So you can only imagine their response was the ruler. So my entry point into the diagnosis process was long trips to the City of Hope in the Inland Empire with my mom almost on a bi-weekly basis, getting tested and medicated, and a lot of these drugs didn't even have names yet. I mean, I had creams that you'd put on your wrist, little sticker patches that look like nicotine patches that you put on your back, pills. I mean, just
So basically, you're like a test subject.
yes. And so that was problematic, to say the least. When I first started on I think it was the Klonopin patch, it comes in a sticker that's kind of like the size of a quarter, and we weren't informed you had to cut it up into squares. So here's
Quarters.
Wow,
yeah,
and you're small.
Yeah, 4 quarters. And so here's 3rd grade Kit with a giant sticker on his back, and so I basically
Zombie.
starting I think at 11 o'clock, I just pass out.
Yeah.
Right.
And they just thought he's either narcoleptic or whatever. And what it actually was is I was being so overprescribed that my body would just shut down, and I'd sleep until 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I'd be waking up for class is over. So my mom, she had this story of any time that she'd come to school to drop me off, and a teacher would say, "Oh, Mrs. Karzen, I love that blouse," or whatever. She'd come back the next day with the blouse on a hanger to give the teacher and just be like, "Here, take it. Don't fail my child." Because, she took.
Do you think there's any? Was there any guilt? Do you think, and hatred towards you, or to your parents, having to go through that? I mean, putting you on the drugs and knowing that. I mean, or the doctors either, the forcing you on this stuff and making you a test subject. Is there any kind of that within the family?
In 2011, I started a foundation called back then it was the Kit Karzen Foundation, and now it's the Born Wild Foundation. And so
That's cool.
what we aim to do is to connect kids with ADHD to sport as an alternative to medication treatments. Right. And so in that process of kind of like interviewing all of these parents and families that have gone through like treatments for their children, what I find is no parent wants to medicate their kid.
No.
And no kid wants to be medicated. Like you kind of,
But
it's nothing worse than being told that you need to change who you inherently are.
Right, but some cases, in extreme cases, like sometimes the medication is, it's there, but then there's the option to over medicate, and you take too much, you take the wrong thing, side effects, all that stuff. It's kind of it's still an open book, and people are trying to figure it out.
Totally, and one thing that I found is, I am not adverse to medication. I am not like, boo modern medicine, like that's crazy.
Like
and I
Tom
think
Cruise, like Scientology, like no.
Now they give you speed.
Yeah, and so what I found is every parent wants what's best for their kid.
Sure.
But when you live in a society now where the first problem is we have an education system that has, in all intensive purposes, not innovated in the past.
I would say failed
ever.
Kids.
You have everything around us, our transportation, our communication, the way that we can...
Technologies.
Yeah, we can watch a video in 4K on your phone. And I can't innovate my education practices in the public sector, or my parents have to shell out a ton of money in order to get that as an 11-year-old kid. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is, one, we're putting these kids in environments that are not suited to what it means to be a kid in 2017. And then this, one of the other big problems is you have these parents who are super busy leading their own lives, and they, as well as the kids, have become accustomed to a lifestyle which garners the now factor. Yeah. We expect everything yesterday, and we can order a meal and have it delivered within 30 minutes. We can download a movie, we can get a song,
and we
whatever.
get mad when it doesn't work.
And we get mad when it doesn't work. And so we expect the same thing to happen for our kids, and there is an answer, quote unquote, and it is putting pills in your kids' bodies. And, they will become calm, and they will learn better, and the teachers will be happier, and they'll get better grades and go to a better college because of it. It's this ugly cycle.
Did the cycling help you? Charge that out of you?
So that was the crazy thing. So when I was 8 to 11, I was on 5 different medications, endured the process of having highs and lows at such a young age. And then when I had this moment where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, right. Internally, my body can't endure this. Like,
so at 11, you said no more drugs?
Yeah, against doctor's orders, they were like, you really kind of like, keep.
Was that your parents' decision as well?
It basically all kind of stemmed from me.
Right.
My parents, they were as involved as they possibly could be, and they wanted whatever was best for me. And for me, in my happiness and my emotional levels and, just getting through the day, if the medication wasn't doing it, then they said, kids' happiness comes first. So we'll make it work. Next 2-3 years were ugly. D's and F's were normal. C's were like Hail Mary.
But you weren't a problem kid, right? You weren't getting in trouble?
I wasn't.
Or were you just not paying attention?
I wasn't as much of a problem kid as I was. I had a lot of social anxieties. I didn't really know how to deal with other kids. I got along better with adults, and I'd also just get onto the table and scream bloody murder. Like, that was my energy level.
Yeah.
And the problem was I also wasn't playing any sports. I was a hyperactive, inactive kid.
Oh.
And so when you have those...
Yeah, you kind of feel stuck,
Yeah, and so, video games and kind of messing around, like...
Well, and at your age, too, I'm a lot older than you, but, back when we were growing up, Nintendo and Atari was there, but, my mom was like, get the fuck out of the house.
Yeah.
And she didn't care if I was gone from 8 in the morning till 8 at night.
Yep.
Street lights.
Streetlights,
And so...
home and the street lights come on.
So, we... And kids nowadays are just more inherently, much more...
they don't want to go outside.
They don't want to go outside.
They just want to stay inside and play video games.
Yeah, and it's kind of fucked. It's sad. It is fucked up.
Sad.
It's sad, and I mean, there's nothing. I mean, shit. We used to go out and try to find rope in trees and make rope swings and try to fucking hurt ourselves and dig tunnels, you know, and all that kind of shit, you know.
Yeah. It's a very different way of life now, and so dealing with the fact that I didn't have those like outlets to kind of expend this energy from a mental or physical like perspective was incredibly difficult. And it wasn't until, I tried all these sports, all the all-American sports, all these weird little oddball sports and rock climbing, whatever. And my dad, who used to race bikes when he was a teenager, he started getting back into cycling because the newly opened Cal State Dominguez, velodrome in now at the StubHub Center opened. They had the Junior World Championships there. He goes, attends, and he falls in love with the sport all over again after a 40-year hiatus.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And so he gets a track bike and starts riding again, and he comes home one day, and my dad, son, I don't care if you like it, but you're going to try it. And we're going to go to my old home track at the Encino Velodrome at the Balboa Park, and there's a youth class on Thursdays, and I don't care if you like it, you're going to try it. So here's, 1 week later, here's Kit with a white T-shirt and his mom's spandex on a little rental Fuji bike. And I did a few laps, and I came around, and I was surprised as ever saying to him, and I'm just like, Dad, I think I found my sport. And that was the beginning of
an 8-year
journey to...
How many miles do you think you rode? Just total.
Oh, like...
I mean, half a mil?
Hundreds of thousands.
Half a mil? Maybe a mil? I mean, right?
That would actually be a very interesting calc. I'd have to look at my old training logs to see what that would be like. I mean, you ride thousands of miles a year.
I mean, you're riding in 3-4 days a week, like you said, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're just on your bike.
Totally, and you
on your bike all day and shit.
Yeah, you can ride around 100 miles a day for.
Right, I bet you it's like over 5, easy, man.
I will have to get back to you.
Yeah, get back to us on that.
Yeah.
During your time as a cycler.
Yeah. So.
I did that on purpose.
Yes.
Sorry. I had to throw it in there. As a cyclist, what did you accomplish? Brag a little bit, please.
Oh, jeez. I was fortunate enough to win a couple national titles, broke a U.S. record, went on a bunch of World Championship and World Cup teams, raced in the Pan Am Championships, traveled around the world.
So you did it.
Did a lot.
You did it.
Yeah, it was a very active 24/7 lifestyle.
So once you decided it was this was you took it as far as you can pretty much take it. Right?
Yeah, from a track cycling perspective, outside of the Olympics, yeah, I mean it was racing in everything around the world.
Did you have Olympic hopes?
Yes. Yeah.
And?
2012 was the Olympic dream. Let's see. So in 2011, we were the kind of development team for the Olympics, and we were looking for a 2016 debut. And when you are a part of a sport where in the United States, sport is the first thing that has dollars that are cut when you're funding two wars and coming out of the Great Depression. USA Cycling was
pretty low on the list.
It's one of the things that just gets hit, like every sport does. And so between that and, some fun bureaucracy, which I'm sure we've all dealt with before, it came to this point where the team that I was on was basically shut down. And this was after kind of full-on dedication for years, but then also hardcore dedication for these 2 years leading up to this kind of moment. We were helping train with and alongside the women's squad who ended up getting silver in London in 2012. And so that was awesome. But
These ladies?
These ladies. Well, so this is actually the 2016 women's Olympic team, but so some of those girls were from the 2012 Olympic team that ended up getting silver. That time was really hard to kind of like digest. And
So you didn't even get a chance to ride to fail. They failed you before you even had a chance.
I wouldn't go as saying listen, I have a wonderful standing relationship with USA Cycling.
Okay.
They did nothing but good by me as far as I'm concerned.
Gotcha.
It was just,
Wrong place, wrong time kind of thing?
It was
Or
just circumstantial.
timing?
And,
Funding.
these things happen, right? And so without them, I would not be here today. And so I wish them nothing but goodwill, to the point of where I ended up being like doing press officer work for their 2016 Olympic squad, and doing all their photography and media stuff for the Team Pursuit squad, and they ended up getting silver. And so I love them.
So it opened up doors for you being a cycler.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to do it.
There
So,
are
I mean-
a lot of cycler doors.
So it opened up a lot of doors,
Yeah.
and you just mentioned photography.
Yeah.
Were you always into photography, or were
Not
you?
really.
Because you come from a photographer.
Yeah, my dad was a photographer that did a lot of really great things in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
and
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You talk about it, I'll show it.
So
This is one of the reasons why I love your dad. Just
Yeah.
the fact that I can relate something in my 80s life to something that he did and that everybody else does. And one of the ways that I know Kit's dad is he created a show called Stringers LA back in 2008, 2009, and I was the main stringer on that show. Kit was 13 at the time, and it's I've watched him grow. But one of the things that I was mentioning is go ahead and tell him the Letterman connection.
Oh, well, so my dad, we went to the same high school, and so they had an architecture class there, and so my dad's dad was an architect for Karzen Homes, and when you're an architect, a lot of times they have cameras to kind of help take photos of the buildings and stuff that they're working on, and so my dad got this camera, fell in love with it. He started getting...
The 70s?
Yeah, this is in the 70s, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad, because he graduated, I think in 79. And so he starts, taking these photos. He gets accepted to Art Center, but he wants to go to Paris with his best friend Dana Ross to, try and become a fashion photographer. So he goes to his dad and he says, "Dad, this is my idea." And he says, "Absolutely not. Like, this is crazy." And so his dad ended up starting to get into the process of a divorce. And he says, "Mark, maybe it's good if you go to Paris." So he goes to Paris. He's probably 18 at this point. Living, breathing photography, starts becoming bit of a fashion photographer, and then a bigger fashion photographer, and doing stuff in Depeche Mode and like all these honkin' magazines. And finally he comes back to the United States, and he's got just a portfolio that anyone would kill for. And he's probably 21 at this point. So it's kind of like, where do you want to work?
Right.
And so the first place that he starts working is David Letterman. And he's there for 10 years helping shoot the bumpers for the intro and outro segments for the show.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Iconic images.
yeah, and so after 2,000 some odd images were taken, that just became, infamous, in the industry. He started touring around and doing even more photography, and then he got onto Saturday Night Live and shot there for 10 years. And then eventually ended up meeting my mom.
That
towards
I
the
did
end
not
there.
know.
Yep.
I didn't know the SNL.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did he go to the big SNL? I know he went to the big Letterman send-off.
Yeah.
I know he was a part of that.
Yeah.
Did he go to the SNL 40? Was it 40 years or whatever it was?
No, he only went to the Letterman rap party. But yeah, it was a very big part of his life. And so growing up, there were cameras everywhere and antique stuff and prints and negatives. I had never.
No, they're iconic pictures. I remember seeing them in the 80s watching Letterman. So here's some of them now. These ones right here, they're all, I mean, they're iconic images. It's what you saw going in and out of the commercials.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing.
Why we're supposed to be sleeping.
This is all pre-digital, so, you know, all the graphics that have to be laid in are either done by hand or...
A lot of work back then.
A lot of work. And so he was a part of a really rad team. And so we still, to this day, like, have some props of just, you know, from all these photos. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, those photos are sweet. So you come from a photographer. Let's talk about your photography.
Yeah, well, so kind of like backtracking, so I'm in Israel. All this craziness is happening. I transitioned back into life at Oakley in corporate America, having a very, very difficult time adjusting back into, like, Western life.
After Israel?
Yeah.
And what year is this?
Israel. This is 2015 now.
Gotcha.
So this is probably like January now, 2015. What is the meaning of life? Like, what am I doing? I'm marketing sunglasses and having a hard time kind of like justifying that. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end for me there. My parents had to talk me down on
Ready for another awoken moment?
Ready for the woke.
Yeah.
And so my parents were kind of like talking me down for months and months, and, you know, every day I wanted to quit my job and do something, I just didn't know what. And so my family comes from a reality TV background.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, and so, you know, my dad and aunt, and, you know, they're heavily involved in the industry, but for me it was a lot of I wasn't ever like over the moon about kind of the shows that they were working on, just because I never really got close enough to it. And so I like, including Stringers, like, I had a very arm's length to the types of stuff that was happening on that, because I was a kid bike racing, and so it just never really
Dead bodies didn't interest you.
Well, for me, I was like, TV.
It's my fucking dad. It's my dad's friend. Who gives a fuck?
Like,
I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, and so it never really came across an idea. Like, I was always the sport kid. I always was like the black sheep who'd never got into TV. So why would I start now?
Right.
So, post Israel, my dad, a couple months later, he shows me this episode of Vice, which I had never seen before, and it was covering the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. And it was gonzo journalism at its finest. And
Had you known that they were a magazine before they were?
I didn't know Vice.
I think you didn't know anything about Vice, yeah.
And so for me, I was just like, oh my God.
Right, they used
like,
to, I mean, the magazines, if you've gotten your hands on any of the
yes,
magazines
now,
now.
totally.
I mean, right.
Yeah,
and
and
really nice layouts, really good photography,
and so
good
for
articles.
Me, and just like cinematically, story-wise, the conviction behind it, you know, moving the needle. And I'm like, this is worth my time. Like, I need to do this.
I'm all in here.
And so, by fate, would have it, about a month later, I get notice that thousands of employees and myself are being laid off from Oakley. And I'm like, great. Like, this is what I need. This is
you were
the
stoked
push.
about that.
Yeah, I was totally stoked.
You didn't want to quit.
Yeah, I mean, I was much, much well off, you know, as opposed to some people who had been with the company for a long, long, long time, and that was kind of their thing. I was, you know, there for 3 years at that point, and I was ready for an out. This was it, and it came calling. So that day, you know, months later, when we finally did the transition out, I spent the first half of the day packing my desk, and the second going straight to Sammy's camera and using all of my severance on camera gear.
That's cool.
And so probably that afternoon, I'm like walking around trying to learn how to work a DSLR. And so I started just shooting, and trying to learn from my dad, who wants to listen to their dad. So that was a process. But so, yeah, I started just shooting anything from nightclubs to stuff with my friends to friends who wanted to or becoming musicians, just literally anything I could kind of get my hands on.
Cool
just,
content.
Yeah, just doing stuff for free. What else could I find? And then
how do you get share?
Well, so that's
I mean, come on, and you're not. Well, is that share? Or
that's not share.
It's not share.
No,
all right, I got you now.
That's like the #1 share impersonator.
Gotcha.
From
Is that a dude?
That's a winner from RuPaul's Drag Race.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
At first,
There's
I
your
thought you
answer.
had like you were in front of Cher. Like I'm like, dude, he's doing it.
Yeah. So that I mean.
But you do have some great performance shots
great.
here.
Yeah,
those
so-
are great shots.
So that I was very excited to start kind of getting into the world of photography because it gave me this one access but a new
great shot.
way to look at the world, whereas I think a lot of times we just pass by and everything is just kind of there.
Speaking of looking at the world, let's talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah.
You actually ran off there and took some really cool shots. So we wanted to ask you a little bit about your time in the Dakotas at the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we have a little video here if you want. It'll go through his pictures.
Oh yeah, so I just have a natural green thumb, and so from that perspective, I feel like there are alternative ways to help the country with jobs and sustainability and stuff outside of laying more pipelines. And so I wanted to go to support, but then with the increasing amount of conflicts, for me, I knew that this was something that I just had to go to kind of help cut my teeth. And what is the process of driving 2,000 miles into North Dakota?
Yeah, I listened to some of your podcast, and you were telling the woman in that podcast that you kind of went there with you didn't want to take sides. You want to kind of be kind of balanced and
totally
and check out both sides.
Totally, and I feel like that's kind of the whole purpose of journalism, and especially nowadays where there's the whole quote unquote alternative facts. Like I wanted to just go and document.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the guy who's out there posting social media stuff and just being like F you, F you, F you. And I think I may have done that on one, which just so happened to be the most viral thing that I posted, and that was just a photo of a bullet that was shot at me by an officer that ended up hitting a woman in the head. But so here, all I'm doing is basically capturing these moments, stating the story of what was happening, and then kind of let it go from there.
You were there during the
conflict.
Yeah, you were there. I remember you sending me some photos.
Yep.
And next thing I know, I'm scrolling down Instagram and I see you on CNN.
Yeah.
I was like, dude.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Kit's on CNN.
Yeah, so one of my goals when I got there was one to obviously try and help tell a few stories, but then secondly, try and get picked up by any sort of news network, which I had never done before, and then I got in contact with CNN, and then they became heavily interested because there were no major news networks there. There's
mainstream media didn't really
not
go
at all.
Yeah, and they only started, to be honest, catching on heavily
after
the conflict where girls' arms almost blown off, and
RT News has been there. Was there? I mean, initially, I think they're a really good news outlet that's been covering it since it as it was growing.
Yes. Yeah, and there was Unicorn Riot was there, and I think by the last 2 days I was there, Washington Post showed up. But
if I knew you were there, if I knew you were going,
Yeah.
we would have figured something out. But by the time I found out you were there, service was so terrible we couldn't
horrible.
we couldn't get each other's footage to each other. You
Yeah.
couldn't get me your footage and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But on something like that, we're your outlet.
Well, so that's the funny thing. So you guys have it down to a science. I had it down to what? So, I show up the day that the major conflict happened on the route to 1806 bridge. I had arrived probably 2 hours earlier.
Damn.
It's starting to get dark.
And cold.
And it's 20 degrees.
Yeah, look at the ice. Look at that ice.
So this is because the water cannon was spraying
That's a
for
good
hours.
picture.
That
Nice
was
shot,
actually
dude. Nice
that
shot.
was the photo that was the reason why the officer shot at me with the. It's not a rubber bullet. It's like a foam riot gun bullet that's 40 millimeters. Anyways, so I show up.
They're like professional Nerf bullets.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I Kit, who's never shot a gun before, I'm I had done.
Have you ever been shot at before?
I've never been shot at before.
Yeah.
No, that was my first. And so I.
It's not fun.
No, it was heavily terrifying. And so I posed this thing, and I said it was like a rubber bullet, and I ended up getting like a bunch of flack initially on social media because they were like, well, it's not a rubber bullet, and so if you're lying about that, then this whole story must be lying. And I'm like,
does that look like a lie?
God. Well, yeah, exactly. So, I
Is that you?
No, that's not me.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the indigenous people who had a bunch of canoes who was used.
Is that the canoes right there?
Yeah, the canoes on the left-hand side, and they were being used to transport medical supplies amongst the camp. And there was this was Thanksgiving Day where the all on the top of that ridgeline are local police officers, and at the bottom are all the water protectors who created this man-made bridge in like 10 minutes to cross, and just kind of like it was just a giant like pissing match.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a conflict that happened, but then the following day, water protectors come out, find that they broke the bridge, they stole the canoes, they sawed them in half, and they put them behind barbed wire.
Oh, wow.
Like, okay, great job, guys. Like, this is a good way to kind of stoke the fire. So this guy is walking around shouting at the cops, like, you stole my property. Cops are like, these are deemed as, tools for obstruction.
So what is your point of view then, like towards like so you're there, you're immersed in all this, and
Yep.
and you're seeing what's going down.
You're
but,
trying not to pick a side.
Yep.
Well, but yeah, no one. Yeah, but there's facts and there's claims to this whole story here, and like I've read like 4 or 5 different articles that said there was over like 389 meetings with over 55 tribes. I mean, they were letting them know that this is what's happening. You know, even though they rerouted it, they had plenty of time to. It's not like they just showed up and they started laying pipe. I mean, there has been meetings about this, right?
So as far as I'm concerned, from what I heard at the camp, the initial so the land that it is being built on is technically Army Corps land.
Right. It's all privately owned.
Well, it's kind of. So like Army Corps land, it's interesting. I guess it's technically public domain. Because it's not used, and the land itself, aside from it being like native burial land by the Native Americans, is seen as kind of like open passage. Whereas you've got the town of Bismarck a couple miles north. That's where the townspeople were just like, we don't want this to go through. What town would? So it's. Far as I know, they started kind of just laying the groundwork to have it happen without consulting the Native American tribesmen or the elders, and that's where the conflict started. It became this war of words of, we had these meetings, you didn't attend. You didn't have any meetings. We weren't invited, and so that's.
It turns into a he said, she said, shit, and I mean, it becomes a debacle. But
100%.
I mean, if it doesn't go, I mean, I understand that. I mean, first off, I mean, the American Indian has been fucked by the American white government since they landed on Plymouth Rock. Yep. I mean, nobody's disputing that.
Yep.
I mean. And I mean, Thanksgiving, disguised as a feast, and I mean, it's sad. But at the same time, these pipelines, they say statistically, the pipeline's a much safer way to get oil to A to Z than in rail cars. And all the rail cars, since they've been, having 2 rail oil barrels, it's been putting higher tariffs and taxes on the grain, and it's been putting less grain on railroads to get from A to Z to places it needs to be, and less boxcars available for the grain means higher prices for it when it does get on the trains. So I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose, except for the rich oil men and pipe makers of the country. So
I think one thing that I found when I was in Bismarck a half a dozen times and kind of speaking with some of the locals, there were two stark ideas that I kind of took away from there. One was first they just had a lot of fear for their local officers. That was the big thing. The fact that these officers were being threatened or under fire, that scared the hell out of them. Although at least the time that I was there for a week, there was never any sort of conflict to where officers were any near remote danger. I mean, even the night of the massive Sunday night conflict, the only thing that was happening towards the officers were half drinking bottles of water being thrown back after spewing.
Pretty tame.
Pretty tame, because even on the camp, they don't allow drugs or alcohol in you or on you on the camp. They don't allow any sort of weaponry, anything that can be construed as a weapon. Yeah. I mean, it's a very kosher environment. And so to kind of see this image painted of the water protectors as these anarchist, crazy people, that was a little interesting to kind of hear the perspective of. And then the secondly was, whenever there was a conflict between the townspeople and the water protectors, and it just became this face-to-face war of words, 99.9% of the time where it ended up defusing was with the townsperson saying, well, I don't really know what's going on.
Right.
And I think that the townspeople at the end of the day, all that they want is, one, safety.
Right, and not fucked up drinking water and that.
Totally, they don't want to become the next Flint. But I think a lot of it comes down to, the sanctity of their livelihoods. They need jobs.
Right, and I think this pipeline is boasted over the time it's been in process, somewhere between 8,000 to 12,000 new jobs that this pipeline could produce.
And so that's the thing. One thing that people just need to remember is pipelines. When the majority of the jobs that come from pipelines are in the construction phase.
Yeah.
And so Dakota
welders, fitters.
Totally. And
equipment drivers.
When you have hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of miles to kind of
lots of equipment, lots of guys.
I mean, people are foaming at the mouth to work on those jobs, and I'm sure they're high paying and there's lots of them to choose from. But when the pipe is laid, it's done. And, there's very little maintenance unless there's an oil spill.
Right.
When you see something like that in comparison to something like clean energy, where I think it's for every $1 million that fossil fuels contribute towards the GDP, clean energy can actually produce up to 9 times as many jobs.
Yeah.
Because you're laying an entire new infrastructure, technologies, outfitting towns and trying to basically just build something from scratch. Yeah. And this is something that will take a very, very long time to convert.
Yeah.
And so these jobs, I feel like the J word, and especially, with our latest administration and that being kind of one of the biggest thing, we need more and better paying jobs, and we're losing jobs.
We're going to make America great again.
Exactly. I think if only they knew that, that the Tesla and these big, solar energy companies, they're not like the bubonic plague of, I get that, Uncle Joe and Father Tim grew up, at the coal town and, went down to the quarry and threw rocks and
exactly.
And this is their way of life.
Like you were saying, these new technologies with Tesla and the batteries and the solar power, it's not as easy as just, digging a hole in the ground and oil comes up and it's right there and it's tangible and we're moving it now. Yeah. I mean, it's technologies and renewable energies. It's scary. It's a new frontier. It's a new frontier, and people are hesitant to invest in it, and and that's what and people drag their feet. But I mean, obviously, we should be invested in renewable energies and putting money into those. Another question I want to ask you is, during the protests and the rioters, did you see? Because the thing is you could be out there on the waterfront and the riverbanks, but a lot of this stuff stems from local city councils and legislators that have already sold and done these backdoor deals. And so was anybody in the towns, or is it all mainly up at this riverbanks?
A lot of times,
did anybody go to the local office and the legislators and go, "Hey, man, how come you sold us out?" And
you have some parking lot stuff here.
Yeah, so this was actually Thanksgiving Day in the town of, oh God, I forget which town this is. It's right outside of Bismarck. But so they went into this major intersection, basically shut down the town, and there were a few like people who were local townspeople and came, and there was some like confrontations and stuff. Nobody like got hit, or I think one person got arrested when they started dispersing the crowds and everything. But it was heavy.
Right.
Well, yeah, when you look like that.
Yeah, I mean, but so that's the funny thing. Like, you have the day of Thanksgiving when you had like all the police officers on the top of the ridge and all these people down on the bottom, like yelling at each other. You'd have people like wearing plastic gloves, which then the officers would yell down and be like, "That is."
Aggressive.
That's an act of aggression.
Right.
You know, what are you doing with those
just rubber
gloves?
gloving up?
Like, are you pouring like a Molotov cocktail?
Right.
Like, what is going on? You know, you shouldn't be wearing that gas mask. That's a sign of aggression.
Right.
And then everybody would yell back, "We're doing this in response to you
spraying us in pepper
shooting and
spray,
spraying like
water
Like,
cannons."
of course, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's such a weird. It was an incredibly tense and convoluted, you know, conversation between the two of them, because it was so much he said, she said, and he did, she did.
Yeah.
I hope that these towns, one, become more understanding and open to the idea of new technologies, and you know, with respect to the fact that yes, it is not old heritage. These aren't like old school things that you can take pride in from the 50s or 20s or whatever.
That's another thing too, Kit. It's like, you know, so I've been thinking about it, and it's like people, like the advancement of of our civilization and the human race. I mean, we can't go back. We're not going backwards.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you have to adapt.
Are you sure?
We have to adapt. I mean, you have to figure out. You know, you got to find a fine line between, you know. You're not making everybody happy all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, and the oil in the pipeline, from what I've read, is like they say, it's a much safer way to transport this oil. You know, and so I don't think the Army engineer, of course, are purposely trying to make this bad and make this you know, this fucked up pipeline leaky and whatever have you. And I've read, like I said, I've been reading. There's like 8 other like pipelines that go underneath the Missouri River at that junction anyway already, you know? So it's like things you have to, like I said, this isn't old cowboy and Indians days. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I just like, you know, this world is advancing on, and if we don't put more people in power that are going to be, you know, more focused on renewable energies, like Elon Musk and those giant batteries in the homes that he wants to do, which I think is really fucking smart, and that's really innovative. But I mean, this country is oil based. I mean, everything we do.
Totally.
I mean, you know how you got to the protesters
100%.
in your car that needs oil, you know,
Yep.
and hospitals, food, all the clothes that we're wearing, all the manufacturing, agriculture. Everything in this country is driven and needs oil to move.
Yeah, it is. That's the way that the country is currently like set up, and it's also not set up to change. Like,
right,
that's the most
that's the
difficult
thing we were
part.
talking about right there. It's like it's hard. It's a big jump to get to these new renewable energies. Look at, you know what? How about the desalination plants? Like Saudi Arabia has them all over the place. You want to know why? Because of a need, a human need, because they have no natural water and rivers and that are flowing through that country. All they have is fucking sand and dirt. You know, so but the desalination plants, they create a giant piles of sand and waste, and the plants are, you know, they're big smoky stacks. They had one in Florida running for a while trying to see if it worked, and I heard that thing. I don't know if that thing's running anymore, but it was constantly breaking down. The waste was piling up, but out of necessity, and like they make it work in Saudi Arabia, you know. And so, you know, innovation and technologies, you got to just find that balance, you know. I think, and you know, you just can't just be on one side of it and the other side, and you gotta try to find the happy medium.
Totally. You know? I feel like there is an inevitable change within the not only the United States, but just the planet in terms of how we consume and produce, as well as just sustain. And I feel like there are all these little things that we keep tripping over.
Yeah.
You know, jobs don't matter if we don't have a planet.
No, absolutely.
You know,
sometimes
what kind of planet do we live on if we don't have jobs? Like, you know, there's so many.
It's the cart before the horse, horse before the cart. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I hope that, you know, through the work that I've tried or attempted to do over the past years, so, you know, a big part of what I want to try and do is just help raise questions through just inherent imagery and storytelling that can potentially move the needle.
Right.
And I think a lot of that just comes through basic exposure. When I'm, you know, shooting these water protectors being sprayed in the face by a water cannon at 2 a.m. in 20-degree weather, you know, I'm not like trying to go and send some crazy, you know, hard left libtard, you know, messaging. I'm trying to, like, this is what's actually happening.
That's how it's going down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, while you're hanging out in your home and, you know, trolling the internet, like,
or while you're eating your turkey.
There's an actual, like, crisis happening
Right.
in North Dakota. And so there's a much bigger question here that I think that we need to fundamentally address, and that can only come from starting the conversation itself.
And when you left,
Yeah.
something when you left the Dakota pipeline, something did happen, correct?
Yeah, well, so...
But then we got a new administration,
Yep.
and then something happened again.
Flip-flop, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened?
Well, so when I left, there was a big shipment of veterans that came to, you know, quote unquote, protect the water protectors in a nonviolent manner against the local area police forces and the aggressors. And the governor of North Dakota, aside from, I think there was a message saying that on this date we're going to be vacating the premises to clear out, you know, quote unquote, trespassing on Army Corps land. The day before that happened, the Obama administration said, we are not allowing this construction to continue without there
they
being...
put a halt to it.
There being...
So everybody was happy and thought they kind of won for the most part.
I think if you really...
That the fight was on hold.
On hold. I think if you knew exactly what was going on, that you know that the fight was long from over. I think if you're just someone who, like, is trolling through the internet all day, like, and seeing a breaking news notification, oh great, the Dakota Access Pipeline's not happening.
It's kind of how it was.
I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Inevitably, you can't right now, especially. I think it's very difficult to kind of win this argument over, I don't know, just like by occupying a piece of land and hoping for the best. Like, at the end of the day, it's going to come either through change from the executive branch, or there has to be some crazy thing that happens from the Environmental Protection Agency in their impact study, which is effectively being, like, dismantled as we speak. So I don't know.
So the new administration did some things.
Well, yeah.
And he also did some other things, and that's going to get us into LAX.
Yeah.
Go ahead and...
the administration, the Trump administration, signed an executive order to proceed the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, as well as complete the 4th phase of the Keystone Pipeline.
Are you going back?
Well, so that's actually the interesting thing. Dakota Access Pipeline, I think the area is vacant now. Yeah. The local tribes people sent out a message on Facebook and saying that it's getting into spring, the ice is going to thaw, it's going to become a, you know... Slush, and just like the entire area is just going to become...
too hard.
Like filled with water at the campsites, like basically just leave. And so there's some uproar online from what I saw, people kind of just saying like sellouts or whatever. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't been following it like super hardcore of what's happening there, but as far as I know, the area is being vacated.
Because other stuff has been happening.
Well, yeah, there's it's been an incredibly active, exciting
15 days now? Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the big things that happened as well was the, you know, quote unquote Muslim ban signed by the Trump administration stating that.
Wait. It's not a ban, right? That's what they
Oh
want.
yeah, that's right.
It's
not
extreme vetting.
Yeah, it's extreme vetting. Although we can call it a ban, but they call it a ban. But who's
you know
right?
what?
Who's
You know what?
right
I think
these days?
they really are just fucking with the media now. I mean, Trump is he's just good at it.
You've never had a president where you had to fact check his words. It's the first president where you've actually had to fact check.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we're in 2017.
He's teasing the fucking media. The media teases him back. I mean, it's a fucking shit show. It really is.
He came out and said that all the protests, the airports were backed up because of a glitch, not because of the protests. So, anyways, you find out he signs that, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I find out that the one of the executive orders was that they were going to be quote unquote banning refugees or green card holders coming back to the United States from 7 primarily Muslim countries in the Middle East from entering the United States. And so there's just like so many things to say about this. One of which, I grew up, in West LA with a lot of Middle Eastern friends. My 2 best friends, one is a Iranian Jew, the other one's an Iranian Muslim. Both have family, that came from the Iranian Revolution. Like, these guys understand what it means to have to move everything and the risk, and to have like this, gold star kind of thrown on you like the Jews not too long ago is just kind of crazy.
I'm sorry. There's a joke, and there's a Jew, an Iranian Jew, and an Iranian Muslim all walk into a velodrome.
Okay.
Right?
And then they become best friends, right? And so this is what, so for me it was incredibly insensitive, just because I now have to watch my friends whose family actively travel back and forth to Iran. Like, how fucked up is that? And so I ended up going to LAX when they had their big protest this past weekend, and ended up kind of covering some of the stories and people who are coming from the airport or from the refugee holding tank. And it was just this whole
There's a story of a
nightmare.
guy in Detroit his mother passed away because they're from Iraq, and I believe he was in our military as an interpreter or whatever, and she was sick and she couldn't they wouldn't let her into the country, so they had to go back to the airport or back. I don't know if it was she was in Iraq and they were holed up at another airport, but they wouldn't let them in. And she basically passed away. And this guy lives in Detroit.
Yep.
And he's like straight out going, fucking, this whole thing might cause my mom to die, So, and that's another thing too. People were saying this is going to make us a lot, this make us safer, but. If you think about it, that's how almost like homegrown terrorists get started, because this dude lives in Detroit, right? His mom and family are from Iraq, and now she couldn't get in. She passed away, and this is how he feels living in our own country. Yep. So this guy didn't need to fly anywhere to fucking hate us or be mad at the administration. He's already here.
Yep. Yeah.
And in Detroit, which is a fucking crazy town.
It's an incredibly difficult thing to watch, because you after having a family who comes from Jewish descent, and the very real things that happened of you can't exist or be here because of a religion, or even worse, of where you're from. What a sad, scary
That's why I
stance.
exist. I'm alive because of shit like that.
Yeah,
my family said goodbye, Germany.
Right, and so
we're going to America.
My dad's side came from Ukraine, and my mom's side came from Scotland, and we're all basically, everyone who's not Native American is an immigrant. And so the idea that to kind of stoke this fire of Islamophobia, which is what it is, the fact that someone from Iraq or Iran or whatever is automatically needing to be super vetted because they're this is in 2001. That's actually crazy. Yeah. And you have this small Muslim, being Muslim, it's the largest religion on the planet,
Global.
and you have a few tiny little crazy psychopaths who are causing some trouble, and now you're gonna like just slap them all in the hand. That's quite literally lunacy. And
yeah, I think they went about it really hastily and all wrong. I mean, and out of the 7 countries, there's not even been one person from any of those countries that's even attacked or murdered or killed or maimed anybody in the United States. So, I mean, it's a crazy time, Kit. It's you're in, you know.
Business is booming in my world, which is unfortunately.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it's
job security.
Yeah, and this was actually a very interesting moment because a few men and women started praying right outside of the terminal, and the moment that they completed their prayer, everybody just starts clapping and crying, and it was just this heavy moment to be a part of, and just kind of like show that you're welcome. Like, this isn't scary what you're doing, and
yeah, for the most part, all the footage I've seen, the airports were really like receptive and very humane to to the refugees and foreigners coming in and out of our country and our country's airports. You know, it's not, I mean, like I said, good versus evil. They I like to think that there's more good than evil, but sometimes Scott and I see a lot of evil shit at night, and you start to wonder where the balance is. But it was nice to see that a lot of people were like, this is kind of fucked.
It's for me, it's actually been incredibly interesting now that I've gone through my first quote unquote protest where there was heavy conflict with area police and SWAT. Versus you
got shot at with your first professional Nerf bullet.
Right, with my first pro Nerf bullet, and such a stark contrast to something like the Women's March where there were zero arrests.
Right.
Something like the LAX protests where there were 0 arrests, and I have to applaud the LAPD on how they've handled those 2 protests in particular, because there seems to be like some sort of mutual respect for one another. I think that the protesters know that, these boys in blue are not the ones to kind of like go up against. And then you also see all the crazy violence that's happening in other states, and pepper spray and kind of the stereotypical like clash of the cops versus.
On a night-to-night situation, Scott and I see that when you're talking about like when you're there to document stuff and not really take sides, but it's almost like, depending on which way the situation goes, you can't help but to feel one side to the next, And so Scott and I, at a lot of times, will be out shooting stories, and when you're shooting police officers, a lot of times, for the most part, they're really, they know that we're just there to do a job as well. But every now and then you run into a few that feel like they need to get, pretty, loud about what we can do.
They think we're trying to get the next Rodney King. Yeah, and that's not what we're doing. We're just documenting a story.
And like you were saying, when you're out there in the Dakota pipeline, and when they're obviously when they're shooting water cannons and sawing people's canoes in half and causing all this, like what you're saying is like you're just like baiting them to how much longer do you want this conflict to go on for? So when we're out in the streets in Los Angeles and we're shooting, like when people are resistant to police officers, and I mean police officers have a very, very crazy fucked up job.
LAPD does a good job not killing people.
Yeah,
every night they do a really good job not killing people.
They do, and so like you're saying with the protests, LAPD, they are a very strong police force in nationwide in the United States here, one of the best. But it's you gotta
they're human.
Yeah, they want to go home at the end of the night too, like you said, and you don't want the baiting and picking sides, what's going on. It's sometimes, as videographers and like journalists here, sometimes you do just want to shoot and get the fuck out before, it gets to the point where there's a side to be taken.
And you can't pick a side. You can't pick a side of the bad guys. You can't pick the side of the cops. You can only pick the side of right and wrong.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. You just, whatever's right and whatever's wrong, how you feel, just the cop could be right, the cop could be wrong. The bad guy could be right, could be wrong. But you can't pick sides, especially Todd and I were out in the streets filming.
Yep.
So we just picked the side of right.
Yep.
Or the side of okay. Or the side of let's get out of here.
That was okay.
Yeah. My when I was leaving North Dakota, the one of the photos that had gone viral, it got a lot of praise, but it also got just a lot of hate, which is something for me I just had never really experienced.
Oh, the haters,
social
the haters
media wise, and the
trolls.
trolling, and for me it was just a whole new experience, and for me it was actually
and then
kind
you put the two together. Troll haters, those are the worst.
The troll haters, and that's for me it was actually kind of difficult to digest because I thought that the work that I was going out there was for the most part kind of nonpartisan. Of course, the one thing where I was kind of just like, my shot will always be more powerful than yours and stuff, and just kind of like poke the bear a little bit. That's the one that just ended up going crazy. And so I called one of my dad's old friends who is a CBS news director, and their team is the one that like interviews the murder suspect who killed a family of 5 and pleads self-defense. And he's like, kid, in this job, you first off are going to learn to be an amazing listener. And secondly, you can never take someone's right to have an opinion.
Yeah. Or be fucked up or
And so for me, like that's a muscle that I'm actively growing. And I feel like what's most interesting for me now, and I'm sure you guys experienced this earlier in your careers, is why do you do the things that you do, and in like the most like innocent way possible.
I like cameras.
Yeah, right. And so like my thing for someone who is a protester, like why are you angry or disappointed or in uproar? And then the person who's fighting the protester, why are you angry or disappointed or in an uproar? Like I think there's so many layers to kind of uncover, and for me, strategically, to try and like pick a piece of that story has been the most exciting part, aside from just the top level. Like, it's easy to shoot the story of like 3,000 protesters at Tom Bradley. It's hard to figure out like why is that one individual person there, and all this stuff that they've had to endure to the point of where this actually
what brought
means
them
something.
there? Yeah.
And so that for me is an incredibly interesting part that I'm enjoying, and I'm learning how to turn the knob button from the people who just automatically go to that dark place and just don't even care, want to listen, because people like what they know and they hate what they don't.
Yeah, people don't like change.
Yeah, and so for me, one thing that my day job when I'm working on casting for reality shows now, there are a couple times where I like at the very beginning, like what am I doing? Like I want to cover conflict, not just kind of like slapstick reality TV.
Fluff.
And so, guilty pleasure television.
Yeah. Bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what I call it at my house.
So like the thing that I was talking to one of my fellow casting producers, I was asking her like, what wakes you up in the morning and keeps you up at night? And so she said, I want to cast the kids and the adults that the person in Nowheresville, USA, who's never seen a Muslim or a person of color or do anything sort of remarkable or understand their story, I want to tell that. I want to expose them to these stories that they otherwise would never kind of expose themselves to. And it is in the comfort of their own home, and they can digest as it comes. But the fact that they're able to kind of see that inherently moves a little bit of the needle as well. And granted, sometimes, oftentimes reality TV goes in this weird, fucked up, place of
turmoil. They just want turmoil.
Fed lines to create turmoil and fucking chaos.
They just want turmoil. That's all they want.
But I think, from what I've had experience so far in my time of working in production, the exposure that the people are giving to the viewers, a lot of times when you take away a lot of the gunk, it's actually a really beautiful thing, and I think that's something that helps potentially make people more empathetic towards. At least that's what I
that's a good way to that's a good way to think and kind of get your mindset and wrapped around that. It
gave some more humanity to the job, for sure.
That's what we're trying to do too. You know, when we're out there, you know, whether it's a shooting or a stabbing or, you know, it's someone's house that caught fire, you know, we're just there to document. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, when it's for like fires or cars run through someone's home, you know, Scott and I are always like, you know, here's our card. If you need, you know, any of this footage for like, you know, insurance or, you know, court or anything you need, you know, just, you know, we're there to help. And with firefighters, we're always like, we tell firefighters, you need any of the footage from us, you know, contact us, you know, hit us up at our email. We'll send all the footage to you for free for training, whatever you need, you know. So it's like, yeah, awesome. we want to help too. You know, we're there to document what's going on, and if someone can, you know, get help by that or to figure something out or you know, that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome.
All right, so you want to get personal or are you good?
Let's get weird.
You want to get personal?
I love it.
All right, so get personal. Let's talk your out series.
Yeah.
Or series out. Explain.
So
explain.
In 2015, I wanted to start my first photo series, and I thought, why not cover? I'm fascinated with people's transitions from like major events or just life changes, and so one thing that I thought would be interesting would be kind of like cover people's coming out processes, and you know, kind of like what was the trigger, maybe even just like one moment in that process. And so I went and I started interviewing people that I knew and I didn't know, and just kind of like hearing these, a lot of times like horror stories that you know they had gone through, and I mean, one of the gnarliest ones that I had was an Armenian refugee who came to the country when he was younger illegally. His family was not legal either, and so they're kind of all just living in this house together. And then he comes in contact with someone from the Trevor Project, hearing his story about wanting to be granted asylum from Armenia because as a gay man, it is incredibly, you know, you could just be killed.
Yeah, it's unheard of. I mean, well, it's kept very,
it's
you know,
very, very not
secret.
You know, kosher to live in Armenia there. And so the lawyer said, I think that you actually have a chance here. So they started their case. They prepped it for months. The week before his case, the only LGBT club in Armenia got bombed, and a week later he was granted his refugee status.
Now, who did they get bombed by?
Just local,
just hate mongers and
terrorists,
and
yeah.
You know,
yeah. And
ISIS.
So who knows?
Right.
I mean, it's just like
it's all the ISIS brand, right? I mean, it's all fucking hate.
Yeah, there's a lot
intolerance
of and so
bullshit.
When he got his refugee status, his parents knew about the refugee status, but when in the photo series, I couldn't show his face because they didn't know that he got it for being LGBT. They just thought he was, you know, an Armenian, whatever. And so his family now has green card status, but that was just like, you're abandoning your home to come to the United States because it's so dangerous to be an LGBT member. Like that for me was just like knocked it out of the park. How
long have you been taking these photos and moving with this project?
I took this photos over a month and a half and just posted them all to my personal social media accounts. And so I, at the same time, was actively fundraising for the Trevor Project. And I think we fundraised like $1,200 through donations. But one thing that I wasn't, you know, expecting was the Orlando shooting to happen in the middle of this series. So, you know, here's me like getting real with all these members of the LGBT community, kind of listening to these horror stories, having this just disturbing, horrific.
I mean, right? What a sick fuck this guy was, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and
just
it wasn't
everything.
And this guy was. I mean, all the stories that have come out, right? That he was like, somewhere like floating between, straight and gay, and he had all these accounts, and going and hooking up with dudes.
Somebody was about to out him, right? Is that kind of what it was?
To be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
But I mean, just in general,
that's kind of what I heard, that somebody was about to out him or something along those lines, and he didn't want people finding out, or he didn't want. I don't know exactly what it was.
Just the whole thing.
It's fucking evil, man.
It was as evil. I mean, it was also the day before Gay Pride in LA.
And in Orlando. I mean, there was like a week there.
Yeah,
the festival.
I remember I was out with my friends that night when we heard about it. And actually, not my friends. I was with a group of acquaintances who I just had known, and I remember hearing and just kind of listening to their reaction to it, and it was just so blasé.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed. And just so, I hated.
Were you with friends that are of the gay community?
Yeah, so they were also, LGBT members as well.
And you're saying that when the news came out, you're saying that their reaction wasn't it was
whatever.
It was less.
It was just the
oh, that happened.
Shit, that kind of thing. But it wasn't, it wasn't what I was expecting of them.
Yeah.
And that's one of my biggest grievances actually with, the LGBT community. I personally feel like it is within our inherent responsibility as any sort of minority group, and you can do this in any scenario, but definitely a minority group, to kind of help protect one another. And there is very little of that in the LGBT community, especially.
Why do you think that is?
I think I feel like a lot of people who are in the community come from really sad, broken backgrounds, and I think that carries over into way that they deal with people.
Do you think do you think that there's still in this day that people are still afraid? I mean, the fear of coming out and
totally.
I mean, it's still a really huge stigma.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We live in this beautiful little blue bubble of California, but I hear on a weekly basis.
Right. California's probably a little different, but I mean, nationwide. I mean, it's probably
it's
not
still
it's a hard thing to do, right?
Still a very big thing.
Yeah. I had a friend. I always remember one of my gay friends when I was working in post production. His name was Sean, and we were talking one night about him coming out, and when he told his sisters and his brothers, and he said he's fearing telling his mom and his dad, and so he gets around to it. He lets them know, and there's this giant cry fest, and his mom still really isn't she's kind of heartbroken, she's like, it's not what I expected, and she kind of gave him the guilt trip, well, why do you have to be this way? And he goes, and something that's always stuck with me. It's always stuck with me. He's like, Mom, he goes, nobody would in their whole fucking life would choose to live like this. This is just how I fucking am. Yeah. And that, I mean, when I heard that, and then, like I said, I have lots of gay friends and I have lots of lesbian friends, and I just it's sad that when you can't you can't be yourself. I imagine living like that has just got to be fucked.
Yeah. And I think I'm a lot luckier than a lot of people in the LGBT community in that, I don't think that I am I don't scream it, I don't, it's just I don't kind of come off as that kind of stereotypical, gay guy. And I think, and I have lots of friends who do, and it is.
They show their gay card?
They show it. I'm open about it, but I don't think that a lot of times people would
pin it on you.
No,
right.
Nobody would I'd walk into a bar or something, and someone would be like, "Who's that?" Right? And I have a lot of friends who do, and they just can't avoid it, and I think that for them it's been very tough for them because you have to deal with this in job interviews. You have to deal with this in the workplace post.
The
you
constant speculation,
with
right?
With your family and friends and just people and the bus and walking down a street at 4 a.m. It's a whole thing. And So, to your point earlier when you're asking about like why I think that there's a lot of hate, I think because the stigma is still very much alive, and I know actively people who are continuing to get driven out of their homes, their towns, their families. There's a lot of like broken souls that kind of walk around, West Hollywood and beyond. People who've like made it out of there have never really made it out of there, I think, emotionally, and I think that carries over like an abused animal.
It always stays with you.
Yeah, and so you can go and try and pet the dog, but it's going to bite back. And I think that that's kind of the go-to reflex for a lot of these guys, to the point of where they not only decide to kind of like tear each other down in a very like high schoolish manner, but then they also don't try and build up the community or protect it.
Yeah, they're afraid to go out of their bubble.
Yeah,
because they feel safe in their bubble.
Exactly, and that's the ironic thing, Scott, is to grow the bubble, you have to.
You got to get out of it.
You got to get out of it.
You got to get out of it.
Yeah, you look at it from the outside.
Exactly,
in,
and the majority of my friends are straight, and both of my, one of my best friends is straight, one of them is gay. We go to straight bars, we hang out with straight friends, we do anything and everything.
Do they go to gay bars with you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like it's not
it's
like
an
a
intermix.
thing. And I know people, I know the majority of the gay people that I know only go to gay bars, and they only want to interact with gay people,
Sure.
and they only want to talk about guys or girls or whatever. And so for me, I'm like, to kind of normalize this idea of LGBT, you have to normalize it through effort, not just kind of like hiding behind the Abbey Gates. And so it hurts me to kind of watch these people who are doing these kind of like minimum wage jobs, don't really care, they have nothing but time on their hands, and it's like, why don't you volunteer? Why don't you go to a march? Why don't you protest? Why don't you you do understand that the Vice President of the United States wants you in gay conversion therapy? Does that not
Hey, speaking of him, you know what always bugged me too is fucking Dick Cheney. I know, but when his daughter's fucking gay, and he was denying her fucking health insurance. I mean, his administration was like, no, you guys are sub fucking human. Fuck you, my daughter's how the fuck do you live like that, man?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sickening. It's fucking sickening.
It's
you know what else is kind of funny? I always think those God hates fags fuckers.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy and ironic that all their fucking signs are rainbow colored?
All rainbow.
All rainbow colored, right?
All rainbow.
They're like, we fucking love it. That's our colors, motherfucker.
Yeah,
fuck you.
They're more fabulous than I am. I don't even rock. I don't even rock.
Right?
I don't even rock
Yeah,
around those many.
There's a special place fucking somewhere for those fucks too.
Yeah,
man.
that's it's a conversation that continues to evolve and grow. But so back to the Out series. So we're in the middle of this interview process. Orlando happens. The people who I'm with the night that Orlando did happen kind of just have this very non-reactionary attitude towards it. Drives me crazy. I don't sleep a wink that night, and then the following morning it's Pride. And so my dad calls me up and he says, "Hey son, how are you doing?" And I had come out to my mom and dad, my two best friends, prior.
Kind of recently.
Yeah. But I hadn't actively come out.
Gotcha.
And I never thought that I was going to be the person who goes on social media and says anything, because I just
keep
why?
it to yourself. It's your life. Yeah.
Why? And so I leave a fairly private life regardless.
Right.
It's just another thing. And so the next morning, I'm talking to him and I'm just like, I'm not doing well. I'm just broken right now. And so watching all the news reports, seeing Pride, being there, after hearing these incredible, transition stories of, power and effort and strength, in my mind, I thought, if all of my brothers and sisters who have been gunned down and had their voices taken away, why should I, silence mine?
Right.
Because I'm still here.
Yeah.
And so my dad invited me over. One of his old family friends owns Flaming Saddles in West Hollywood.
Oh, right.
He calls me over. says, "Why don't you come meet me?"
Fuck yeah, horse riding.
And I'm just
bull riding.
So I'm like, sure. So I go. There's my dad in his bike outfit, full spandex at Gay Pride. And we take a selfie, and I ended up coming out with that photo. And
I remember the post, man. I remember the post. I was so happy.
And it was
awesome.
It was, it wasn't as much of a weight off your shoulders as like a lot of people say, because I had a lot of weight on my shoulders with like dealing with Orlando and processing that tragedy. But I was not expecting the reactions that I did.
That same morning, right? Didn't we catch? There was a guy in Santa Monica. Didn't Victor go down and shoot that guy? He was in his car, right?
Yeah.
We had guns, and they yanked him out of his car.
He was on his way to you.
Yeah, he was gonna attack. That was scary.
Yeah, we got that story.
So I mean, your reaction from your friends and family, it was much different than you thought?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, my everybody could not have been more positive about it. I'm aware of how lucky I am to have the types of people around me, and I think that just kind of for me validates the types of people that I want to be around. There weren't any questions about it. I've had numerous.
You didn't lose any friends over it, right?
Didn't lose a single friend. I grew friends, from it. Made more friends. People felt like I was being real with them. I'm incredibly lucky, and my parents couldn't have been.
Yeah, it seems like you got full support.
Kinder about it.
So awesome.
But like I said, I'm not one of those. I'm thankfully not one of those horror stories from the countless people that I've talked to about it. But I.
When you think we're taking strides too as like a society, with like we were talking earlier with the advancement of technology and trying to adapt, like you'd think like as generations go, in the 90s when it was still pretty taboo to come out or to say you were gay or you had gay parents or anything like that. It's like it still kind of dumbfounds me that that people are still so fucking hung up on how you live your life, you know, and what you want to do privately with whoever it is you love. It's like it's still we still have a lot of progression to make on it. Yeah, I agree with you, and it's.
But yet we're going backwards. We're all moving forward as a society, but the rules and stigmata or whatever that word is going backwards.
From a rules perspective, at least when it comes to the government, the thing that I've come to terms with is that innovation will always outpace legislation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
Yeah.
And whether
it might take a little
beyond his years.
It might take a little bit, but I think you're right. It's you got it's that whole thing is there more good versus evil, and like I said, you want to hope that that good will prevail, and that there's better people out there. There's more better people than there is the shit people.
Totally, and I take solace in knowing at the end of the day, I have my solid core group of friends and family and support network that I need to get through the day. I live in a wonderful city with wonderful humans who are progressive and thinking forward to the future. And regardless of how the administration or some asshole on the other side of the planet that wants to bomb the hell out of us thinks, we will continue. We will continue and we will persevere. And as far as I'm concerned, with the work that I do from a photography standpoint, if I can do that to help move the needle for social justice and equality and environmental change, whether I get gunned down in the line of duty or make it to 100, that is the life that I am solely working towards, and I feel like it's a fulfilling and gratifying life, and I've made incredible friends and witnessed amazing things because of it. And so, as long as we continue to just be informed, aware, and care about the future, I think that we're just going to be just fine.
Keep pushing, kid.
Yeah.
Keep pushing.
Trying.
That to me sounds like the end.
You want to give us your social media handles so people can contact you? And
sure. My Website, Instagram, Twitter, everything is just either kitkarzen.com or at Kit Karzen. And
Spell Karzen?
Karzen.
And that's where you get a hold of them, folks.
Yeah.
See ya there. We'll put it all up on the screen for you, man.
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you, Kit.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Don't worry about my coffee hands.
No worries.
It's good.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Of course. For me, life, family, photography means just to continue challenging the status quo. Everything that I do with the photography and my life and the people that I share blood with, it's all about creating that friction and from that kind of spark something great. And that uncomfortability is something that is sometimes hard to deal with, but when you become used to it, then you can do anything.